Hi! Today I'm going to tell you a story about the time that I had a zillion pet mice. And the reason I had a zillion pet mice is because they kept having babies over and over and over and over and over and over. Did you know that a mouse is ready to reproduce when it's 6 weeks old? Yeah, that's like really, really young. Now, before I start telling you all about this, I do not condone, I do not think that people should go out and get a bunch of mice, male and female, or any small animal, and start breeding them irresponsibly, okay? This was a long time ago. I was a lot younger then. It was like in the 90s, okay? It was a long time ago, and I was probably old enough to know not to do it, but somehow I did it anyway. I think because I was just like fascinated with like babies and genetics, and you get these like different color mice, and it's fun to like see like what color they turn out and everything. So I got some mice. I got a few mice, and I'm not really sure if I even knew whether they were boys or girls, and whether I guess they just sold them, like they just sold them male and female all together. Used to, well, nowadays they will make you have, you know, just males or just females, and so maybe they do. Most pet stores I go to, like, they'll have only males or only females of a small animal so that you won't breed them. But you know, at the stores I went to back then, they sold me all these mice. So I get home with these mice, and you know, they had babies. And then those babies grew up and had babies. And then those babies grew up and had babies. And I had like all, like, my mom didn't know, like, I hid them in the closet. I had like a closet that opened, and I had all these little critter keepers, and then I would like just kind of put them all in there, and she wouldn't know that I had them in there. And yeah, it was crazy. And one day she saw them. One day she opened my closet, and she was like, what are these? And I was like, they're my mice. I have a zillion pet mice. And so sometimes they would get out, you know, escape, and then she'd say, there's a mouse in the kitchen. And so I'd have to go get it. And then one day I was just like, okay, this is crazy. This is so stupid. I can't have all these mice in my house. So I was like, I'm just going to let some of these go. And I do not now, like, I would never do that. I would never just let an animal go outside to fend for itself that has been, you know, sheltered all of its life. But when I tell the story, you'll see that it didn't really turn out very bad when I did that. So anyway, I let some of the mice go, and then a few days later, one of them had made it back in the house. So I was like, all right, well, you know, he made it back in the house. I'm gonna just put him back in the cage. And he was a really cute one. His name was Pluto. I would name them all after planets and constellations and stuff like that. So this one was Pluto. He was black and white. He was so cute, and you know, he would get everybody pregnant. He would get everybody pregnant. He was like the one that was the ladies' man or whatever. I should have just gotten different cages and separated the males and females, but somehow I didn't do that. So, you know, that's why I had to let those mice go. And I would think, oh, if I let the males go, then, you know, they won't come back. Oh, but you know, the other problem was the males would fight with each other because they get like territorial. So it's not a good idea to have like a whole bunch of animals together because they might not all get along. So anyway, then my mom was like, you know what, you're just going to have to, this isn't working. You can't just let them go out here. You're going to have to like let them go somewhere else or get rid of them. And so I was afraid to take them back to the pet store because I didn't want people to, you know, use them for snake food or something. So I decided to let them go on my dad's property. He had like a bunch of land. He had a little house and a bunch of land out in the woods, out in the wilderness. So I was like, okay, I'll let some of them go out there. And this was like before Craigslist or anything. So you couldn't just post, oh, does anybody want some pet mice? You know, there was no Craigslist. There was barely an internet at all. There was like an internet, but it wasn't like it is now because it was in the 90s. And I had the internet before everybody, and not everybody had it. So I was one of the few people that actually used it. Nobody else really did. So anyway, I took it to the property at Woodville, and I had this like house that I had made for my cat. It was sort of like an outdoor dog house, and I made it for my cat, but she didn't really use it, and she was, you know, an indoor cat mostly. So I was like, well, I don't need this cat house anymore. So I set up the cat house outside, and I put it next to a creek. So I figured, you know, they're gonna be okay if I put them next to a creek, you know. I put the cat house next to a creek so they'd have plenty to drink, you know, they'd be right there next to the water. So since they were sheltered for their whole life, I got them a whole bunch of mouse food and a water bottle, and I like filled up that cat house with all that stuff, you know, so they'd kind of get used to living in the wild. And I dumped like every one of them there. I feel bad saying I dumped them there, but I guess that's what it was. I abandoned them. I abandoned my pets and into the wilderness. And so I left them there, but I kept 4 of them because they let me keep some. And so I kept 4 females that were my favorite ones, and I let the rest just go. So we left, and then the winter came, and it was in Texas. It doesn't get usually really cold in Texas, but it got like freezing cold. And so I was like, wow, my mice are all out there in the freezing cold if they didn't get eaten up by predators yet. So my dad said, oh, there's no way those mice lived through that. And so we said, well, let's go see if they're still there. So we went over to where I had the cat house, and where they all lived. And what we saw was really kind of amazing, because we saw my mice there, the same ones that I left, and they had babies, and some of them were black and white. We saw an adult female mouse. We saw an adult female mouse carrying around some cute little black and white babies, like moving them around. And I just knew, I was like, oh, Pluto, you got somebody else pregnant. It's like, you know, survival of the fittest or something. Like, he's like the alpha male over there or something, and he was like still over there having babies. And so what they did was they had dug tunnels underneath that house that I made them, and they went and burrowed and lived under there. But the really cool thing was that the wild mice were there too, and they had like made a community. Like the mice in the wilderness had come and lived with them and started like interbreeding with them and stuff. So that was kind of neat, you know. I thought it was good, you know. They made it. You know, I abandoned them. I was heartless, but they made it. So this is what happened next. I had 4 female mice that I had wanted to keep, but I was moving. It came time that I was going to go away to college and move out of state, and my stepmom, she said, you are not taking those mice to college. You've got to get rid of those mice, and we're going to take them, you know, to that land, and we're going to let them go, and you're not going to take them there. So I was like, okay, but really, I didn't do that. You know what I did? This is what I did. I didn't take my mice. She knew I had 4 mice, 4 female mice, but those were like my favorite ones, and I really wanted to keep them, and I didn't want to let them go. So what I did was I went to a reptile store where they had mice only for snake food. Like, it was a store for snakes, and the mice there were only snake food. Nobody went to a mouse food store. I mean, nobody went to a snake food store, a snake store, to buy pet mice. That was feeder mice there. So I got the feeder mice. I got 4 body doubles, and I got them. And so I took them to Woodville. So Woodville, that's where my dad owned the land. And I figured, well, I'll really be saving them, even though I'm buying them and like putting them out in the wild. It'll really be better, because where they are now, they have no chance. They're snake food where they are now. That's what they are. So I thought, you know, it's not that bad. I'm not doing that terrible of thing by letting them go in the wild. So I took them up, and I'm like, okay, this is my last 4 mice, and I'm going to let them go. So I let them go, and everybody was happy. Everybody was like, okay, you got rid of all your mice. But really what I did when I moved out to California is I like put them down in a box. And the way we moved there is that my dad and my brother, we had a U-Haul, like a truck U-Haul that was like carrying the stuff. And then we had my car like on a trailer on the back. So I put the mice in a box in my car, and my dad or my brother or anybody, nobody knew that I had smuggled these mice. And so my pet cats were back there too. I mean, they didn't know the mice were there either because the mice were like down in the box. They could breathe and everything. Because I would go out to the car to check on the cats and the mice, but nobody knew that I was doing it. And then somehow when I got to California, I smuggled the mice in my apartment, and I like hid them from my dad still. So nobody knew that I got them all the way to California. But I did. Those are my 4 favorite mice. So that's the story of the time I had a zillion pet mice. I probably had like 50 actually, not a zillion, but I probably had 50 at one time, which is way too many. And I do not recommend breeding small animals or anything like that. It gets out of hand really, really quickly. And I don't recommend abandoning your pets either. Obviously that was a bad thing to do, but somehow, some way, they made it after all. So I hope you liked this video, and goodbye. See you next time.